Greetings, superhero aficionados. This is Romoyer. We are continuing on with our explaining series for the Constitution. Now we're going to explain Article 1, and we're not going to do every section because, I like to ramble. So we're cutting it down. Like I said, we're following our partner station with doing this right. So we're only going to do sections 1 through 5. She technically didn't do 2 and 3. So because she felt it was talked about enough, but I preferred talk about it anyhow. Why not? There might be something interesting we can talk about it. So we're gonna continue here. I did this in PowerPoint to make it all pretty for you, so we can have some basically to keep me in line. Anyhow, like I said, we're gonna be talking about the Constitution, Article 1, Part 1. Pretty simple stuff. So to start off with, let's talk about Section 1. All legislative powers herein granted shall be vested in a Congress of the United States, which shall consist of a Senate and House of Representatives. Yeah, okay, we're trying to make some voicing here for making it sound old-timey, right? But anyhow, this is pretty straightforward. I shouldn't have to explain anything, but I'm going to anyhow, because that's what I'm here for, right? Help explain things. So basically, it says that, hey, we're going to make a Congress, and it's going to be broken into 2 houses, the Senate and the House of Representatives. And there's a big, long story of compromises and whatnot. We're not going to get on that because that would be a great story for an actual video of its own. But here's one of the big pieces that I think is very, very important with this current timeline we currently reside in. Just had, last Friday actually, so not even a week ago, we had a big Supreme Court decision. Oh, and everybody's so excited. Well, actually, we're so excited as true Americans, and the wusses out there are crying their little eyeballs out. They're so mean. They got rid of abortion. But, it's the Roe v. Wade thing. I did an audio thing on that. I mean, we called a podcast. But we're not going to get into all that again. I can, but I'll make a video for that if I have to. But anyhow, one of the reasons why I bring that up is because it specifically states in here, in this kind of throwaway phrase that really shouldn't even need to be brought up. It really shouldn't. But it is, because we have to, because people are stupid. But it says that legislative powers are given to Congress. That's what it says here. All legislative powers are granted, or herein granted, so basically all the legislative powers that are in this Constitution is going to be given to Congress. And the reason I bring that up is because that means that, guess what? The president can't do create no laws. The president's not allowed to write laws. The Supreme Court ain't allowed to write laws. Only Congress can write laws for the federal government. That's what's in the Constitution. The reason I bring that up is because one of the fights going on, one of the reasons why Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization was such a big deal is the Supreme Court basically said the same thing. That originally, when Roe v. Wade was decided and Casey v. Planned Parenthood was kind of uphold Roe v. Wade, basically both of them acted like a legislative branch when they're really supposed to be a judicial branch. So they're saying, no, we're pulling that part out because we shouldn't be doing that. So anyhow, like I said, this is an important piece to remember, that legislative powers are given to Congress, not any of the other branches. So they can't be stealing each other's powers. It's ridiculous. It's what the whole checks and balances are. We'll get into that as the parts of the Constitution come up. So again, pretty simple. Let's see, Section 2. I know it's going to be a long one. Hold it with me. We'll only go one line at a time, of course. The House of Representatives shall be composed of members chosen every second year by the people of the several states, and the electors in each state shall have the qualifications requisite for electors of the most numerous branch of the state legislature. And I think that maybe it didn't fix it. I noticed earlier when I was putting this in, I had to copy and paste this. There's no way I was hand typing all this stuff out. But you'll notice that you'll see some typos in here. They're not typos because that's how it was written when they wrote the Constitution. So anyhow, basically the first part says that the House of Representatives, right? We had 2 houses, the Senate and the House of Representatives. So the House of Representatives has to get members every 2 years. So their term limit is how many years are in their term is 2, by the people of the state. So basically, every state's going to choose their own individuals, and the electors in each of those states will have the qualification requisite for electors in the most numerous branch of the state legislature. So basically, what this is with the House of Representatives, you are going to have each state have a different number of representatives. All right. So if you come from a super populous state, as in you got a lot of people, you're gonna have a lot of representatives. And if you come from a really tiny state, with not a whole lot of people in it, you're gonna have a lot fewer. And anyhow, all this is basically saying is the number of people you have in your, how do I put it? The number of representatives you're given is based on those electors. It's basically kind of writing out how that's going to be done. Which is, it's based on population. I can't remember how many. It's like every so many thousand. It's like 10,000 or 20,000, I think. Populations, you get one member or something like that. I think that might be wrong. Maybe it's 100,000. But anyhow, there's a set number of it, and that's decided. I think later the Constitution. But anyhow, oh yep, here it is. It's in the bottom, or in the middle section. So anyhow, but anyhow, each one's going to be selected. Oh, that's what it is. Also have the qualifications requisite for electors in the most numerous branch. So anyhow, the other piece is you have to have the same qualifications as other people in your state legislature. So for instance, if your state legislature says, and for the most numerous ones, so some people have, most states have two branches. There also going to be a Senate and a House of Representatives for most branches, and it kind of follows the same way. The Senate's going to have only like one person from each district, maybe 2 people from each district, and then your state of representatives for your actual state, your House of Representatives for your state will have, maybe 2 or 3, kind of the same thing. But anyhow, they're saying they have to match. So if your state says that in order to be qualified for your, whatever your big number thing is, you got to, own a car that goes over 100 miles an hour, and they have to own a tie, and these are just stupid qualifications. I'm just making stuff up here. But anyhow, those are your requirements for your state's legislature, then those have to be the same requirements for who you send to Congress. So basically, the federal government doesn't get to decide what qualifies for your branch or for your state. You get to decide that. You as a state get to decide, which is kind of cool. Let's see here. No person shall be a representative who shall not have attained to the age of 25 years and been 7 years a citizen of the United States, and who shall not, when elected, be an inhabitant of that state in which he shall be chosen. So, okay, I feel like that's missing a word in there somewhere, but, oh, actually, because it says no person. So, it's a lot of negative, so I'm going to kind of translate this to the modern world. Basically, if you're a representative of a state, you have to be a minimum of 25 years old, and you have to have lived in that state, you have to have been a citizen of the United States for 7 years minimum, and that's like over the past 7 years. Not just you were, citizen of the United States for 7 years, you left, you went over to China, and you came back for 5 minutes, and now you can be voted in, and then you got to be for the last 7 years and still hold that citizenship of the United States and all that. But anyhow, and the other one is you also still have to be an inhabitant of the state you're from. So, for instance, if take me for instance, right? I don't call a state home, right? I live in a spaceship. I have a home state for voting purposes. So we'll call it Nebraska, right? And because that's right smack dab in the middle of the country, so I can get to any of the other states pretty quickly. But anyhow, so I say I'm a voter of Nebraska. I have a citizenship in Nebraska, and shoot, I lost it. Oh, that's what it was. Anyhow, I'm a citizen of Nebraska. That means I can't become a representative over in Colorado because I don't live in Colorado. I'm a citizen of Nebraska. All right. And for those of you who are thinking I'm out there cheating, I'm not. I'm joking. Okay, relax. I say these things to protect my identity, as I have to. But anyhow, so that's what it was. Sorry. With your representatives for each state, you have to have been a citizen for at least 7 years. In the last 7 years, at least 25 years old, and you have to be a member of that actual state in order to represent it. You don't want to have Coloradans representing Nebraskans or vice versa. Representatives and direct taxes shall be apportioned among the several states, which may be included within this union, according to their respective numbers, which shall be determined by adding to the whole number of free persons, including those bound to service for a term of years, and excluding Indians not taxed, 3/5 of all other persons. The actual numeration shall be made within 3 years of the first meeting of the Congress of the United States, and within every subsequent term of 10 years, in such manner as they shall by law direct. The number of representatives shall not exceed 1 for every 30,000, but each state shall have at least 1 representative, and until such enumeration shall be made, the state of New Hampshire shall be entitled to choose 3, Massachusetts 8, Rhode Island and Providence Plantations 1, Connecticut 5, New York 6, New Jersey 4, Pennsylvania 8, Delaware 1, Maryland 6, Virginia 10, North Carolina 5, South Carolina 5, and Georgia 3. Okay, let's rewind a little bit here because there's a lot in there. This actually sounds like a whole lot of what? But it's not. It's actually really simple. So basically, what it's saying is that you can't give let's say your poor states a ton of taxpayer money if you didn't. Basically, what you chip into the pot, you get back out of the pot. You can't be giving your poor states a ton of money and giving like $3 over to your rich states like New York or something. So that wouldn't be fair. All right, so basically, representatives are going to be apportioned to your state based upon how many people you have in your state. Now, this is the important piece. This is like really, really important. A lot of people kind of throw this off. Well, actually, they break it. They make it wrong. So we're going to explain this. That actually, Whoopi Goldberg was talking about this yesterday, 2 days ago. Same thing about the whole Dobbs decision. She was coming after Clarence Thomas. Says, you want to be considered a quarter of a citizen? And she's an idiot because she didn't read this, right? So anyhow, basically this states how we determine how many representatives you have. How many representatives are coming from each state? This is really, really important. So the first piece states that you're going to get the whole number of free persons. So your population is going to be comprised of every free person counts as 1. Wow, that's some really hard math. I don't know if I can figure that out, right? Especially if I'm, I don't know, Elizabeth Warren or something. Who the second part comes into excluding Indians not taxed. But anyhow, actually, sorry, that's the third part, because the second part is talking about those bound in service for a term of years. Those are referred to in the modern tongue as indentured servants. So basically, indentured servants are kind of like slaves, but not really, because you're only a slave for like a certain number of time, like it says, for a term of years. So like you're enslaved to this particular person for like 5 years, and then after that, you're done. You're a free person again. They're basically saying, free people, you get a whole vote, and those of you under the indentured servitude stuff, you still also get a whole vote, or at least for a population count. Then it says we're not going to put Indians in there unless we're already taxing the Indians. And this is one of those things you see, especially if you pay attention to the Revolution. They talk about taxation without representation. This is one of the big issues that the colonies had with England, was that they were getting taxed out the wazoo, but they weren't getting represented. And I was like, why? We say we don't need to be taxed this much because we're not getting anything from you guys or whatever, or we don't like your laws. Anyhow, so basically this is to get rid of that. They're saying, okay, if we're not taxing the Indians, then we're not going to count them as part of the population. That would be wrong. It would be cheating, essentially. Trying to, bump your numbers up. However, of course, if you are taxing the Indians for whatever reason, maybe they are citizens of the United States. At the time, I think I've explained this before, at the time, Indians were considered kind of like the separate nation type deal. They weren't really soaked up yet. Still aren't to some degree. But anyhow, so this is just population control as far as making sure that no state cheated. really against the cheating. The next page talks about 3/5 of all other persons. So, what other persons are there, right? You've got free people. Okay, people are free, got that. Indentured servants, okay, got that. Indians. So who's the 3/5? Well, most people will go with the slaves, right? That makes sense. And we're gonna stick with that. You could say that any foreigners could be considered part of other persons. However, not really, because they're not citizens of the United States at all. And this is the one thing that's kind of interesting about this. A lot of people have this out. They're wrong, by the way, just to put that in the forefront. A lot of people have this saying that all black people are only 3/5 of a person. No. So it's 3/5 of all other people. So 3/5 of all of the slaves, not each person counts as 3/5 a human being. That's not how it went. And the reason for this is because you had the North, who had, a handful of slaves or whatever, but it wasn't really slave heavy. And you had the South, which obviously was pretty slave heavy to run plantations and whatnot. And the South really, really wanted to have all of their slaves count for a full vote, even though they weren't going to be allowed to vote anyhow. And then the North was like, you don't treat them like human beings, so they shouldn't get a vote at all. And they had to compromise. Okay, how are we going to do this? And so that's what they decided on. It's referred to as the 3/5 compromise. Anyhow, so then they talk about how we're doing this. How do we determine how many citizens are in each state? Well, the first one just says 3 years after the first meeting of Congress. This is going to take that long anyhow. Let's just face facts. And then after that, every 10 years. Well, you might be going, wait a minute, that sounds familiar. Sure, it should, because it's now referred to as the census. I mean, it was referred to as the census for millennia. I mean, shoot, they got the word census in the Bible, so it's not like it's that odd of a word. But that's what this is. It's just talking about, here's how the census is going to happen. You are going to have this count. You're going to count all free citizens. You're going to count all indentured servitudes or servants as one person. Each one of those gets one vote or one representative populace, whatever. Don't count any Indians that aren't being taxed. If they are being taxed, go ahead, throw them into the bunch, whatever. And then for all the other people that are living there, considered, not really citizens, but kind of sort of, those guys get to, 3/5 of their number. So if they're saying, now I gotta do math. See, so yeah, if you've got 600 people, 3/5 of that would be 60, I think. That don't sound right. Anyhow, I had to do math. Hold on. Okay, I had to pull up a calculator. I'm sorry, I don't do math in my head. All right, 600 people, 3/5 of that is going to be 360 people. All right, that's just how you get the number. Okay, so you 3 or 5 times 600, however many people of your nons that doesn't fall under the other criteria. So you get all those numbers together. That's your population count. You're going to get that the first time 3 years after Congress has met. After that, it's every 10 years. And you see that pretty much every 10 years, which would be basically the 0 years. So 2000, 2010, 2020, 2030, 2040, continuing. To do such matters, the law of direct number of representatives shall not exceed 1 for every 30,000. So like I said, I knew there was a number in there. I couldn't remember what it was. So basically, you get 1 representative in the House of Representatives for every 30,000 people you have. This is one of the reasons why the South wanted to have slaves count as a whole person, because then they could get their representative numbers up, and the North wanted, no, slaves don't get any voice, because that would put the South back down to what they really should be. They're rotten cheaters. But anyhow, so it's 30,000. However, if you don't have 30,000, you still get 1 representative. We're not just going to take you completely out of the loop. So if you're something like, I don't know, Maryland or whatever, with, I don't know what their latest numbers are, we'll say it's 20,000, right? You're not going to, well, you don't meet 30,000, so no representative. No. You're still going to get a minimum of 1. And anyhow, well, I guess Maryland, apparently, according to this, has 6. So they said 1 in here. Providence Plantations. Oh, Rhode Island. Sorry. I got the 2 states mixed up. So Rhode Island, so tiny, you only get 1, right? So they probably have less than 30,000. Basically, if you've got like 35,000, you just get the one. You have to get up to 60,000 in order to get two. Each state shall have one, at least one, and basically this part here, they just threw out, okay, here's what everybody's getting until we get that consensus going. So we're not going to talk about the rest because that's not important. When vacancies happen in the representation from any state, the executive authority thereof shall issue writs of election to fill such vacancies. Basically, all this is if your state loses a representative for whatever reason, right? They die, they get caught with election fraud, get ousted, get in trouble, go to jail. A bunch of noobs, anyhow. But ignore that sound. With the whatever the vacancy reason is, it's up to the executive authority, which in every state is referred to as the governor. They have to come up with, they have to write essentially an election policy to fill the vacancy. So normally, kind of how it was usually understood was that they just got to choose a representative. However, in the modern world, a lot of people just do what's referred to as a special election. So they'll basically say, we need to do a special election. Here's the people that can do it. Here's the people that I'm deciding can go into that. However they want to do it. Every state, again, is going to choose their own way of doing it. The House of Representatives shall choose their Speaker and other officers and shall have the sole power of impeachment. Okay. The last two pieces are kind of important in two different ways. So first off, they're their own body. All right. Even though they play with the Senate, they're their own body. And so they have to choose whatever their officers are going to be. They get to make up the names. They get to make up the positions. But they're going to have somebody that's referred to as the Speaker of the House. They get to choose them. Okay, so that's the first part. But the second part is really important. Sole power of impeachment. So only the House of Representatives can actually impeach whomever, whether it's another House member, whether it's a member of the Senate, the President, Supreme Court. Only the House of Representatives can actually go through that impeachment process. Again, important. We had to do some check. Not only do we have checks and balances between the three branches of government, but we even had checks and balances between the two legislative houses. Right? And we'll explain what the other check is for the Senate here in a second, and it'll be very interesting that I use the word check. So, Section 3. Oops. The Senate of the United States shall be composed of 2 senators from each state, chosen by the legislature thereof for 6 years, and each senator shall have 1 vote. Alright, so this one's pretty simple. Each state, you get 2 senators. That's it. No more, no less. Legislature says how you're going to get it done, how you're going to choose those, and usually, again, that's done by people voting. And their terms get to be 6 years. So House of Representatives, again, 2 years. For Senate, you get 6 years. And just saying each senator gets 1 vote, I'm not going to go there. You can math that out. Immediately after they shall be assembled in consequence of the first election, they shall be divided as equally as may be into 3 classes. The seats of the senators of the first class shall be vacated at the expiration of the 2nd year, of the 2nd class at the expiration of the 4th year, and of the 3rd class at the expiration of the 6th year, so that 1/3 may be chosen every 2nd year. And if vacancies happen by resignation or otherwise, during the recess of the legislature of any state, the executive thereof may make temporary appointments until the next meeting of the legislature, which shall then fill such vacancies. Again, sounds like a lot of words. Let me speed things up, kind of get to the nuts and bolts here. So basically, one of the important pieces to remember when going through the Constitution is that they were building a whole freaking brand new country here. So they kind of had to go and say, here's how we're going to do it for the first go. Get the ball rolling here, kind of kickstart some things. So all this first piece says is this is how we're doing it for the very first term. Right now, in the modern age, 2022, what is it, January 29th? Not January. June 29th. Can't read. June 29th, 2022. We don't need to worry about that part anymore. About getting everything set up. However, it is important to note the rest of it. That every senator, or there's going to be, House of Representatives, right? You're going to have an election every 2 years. You're going to have a whole brand new house every single time. In theory, obviously, because, people are incumbents. But anyhow, we won't worry about that. But the Senate's going to be going through the same thing. every 2 years, they're going to have elections as well. Now, during that time, only a third of the Senate should be getting replaced. So you're always going to have some old heads in there, but you're also going to have some new folks. So you're always getting kind of like a refreshed blood, if you will. New eyes on whatever. Same thing as before, though. If you, for whatever reason, have vacancies, again, people resign, they die, they get ousted because they did something illegal, whatever. Same as before, the governor of their state gets to put somebody in place. However, this specifically talks about it being a temporary appointment until the next time there's a Senate race. Not whichever class you might be in, it's just the next Senate race. So, for instance, if your senator was in, the just got elected like 6 months ago and then quits, you put in a temporary guy for the next a year and a half, and then at the very next election, that year and a half later, you're basically starting the whole process over again for your particular number, which is why the whole classes thing is kind of goes away, because obviously we're not going to force all the classes to rejoin or nothing like that. They wanted it super balanced at the beginning, but now, just it's kind of got itself balanced out already. Sometimes it gets a little off, but it's not that big a deal. Let's see. No person shall be a senator who shall not have attained to the age of 30 years and been 9 years a citizen of the United States, and who shall not, when elected, be an inhabitant of that state for which he shall be chosen. So kind of going again before, like we did with the House of Representatives, there's a lot of negative going on here, so we got to kind of change things around a little bit. Basically, again, it's saying that as a senator, you have to be, this time, 30 years old in order to become a senator. You have to be a citizen of the state you're representing you have to be a citizen of the United States for 9 years. And once again, you have to be a citizen of the state you're representing. The Vice President of the United States shall be President of the Senate, but shall have no vote unless they be equally divided. So, think about this, right? Do a little quick math. No matter how many states you have, you'll always have an equal number of votes, because every state has 2 people, 2 senators. So if you have, like right now, we've got 50 states in the Union, unless you're Obama, and then it's 57 states. But anyhow, if you got 50 states in the Union, which means there's 100 votes. Well, in any situation where it is split exactly down the middle, 50 vote yay, 50 vote nay, we have to have a split. Somebody's got to split the vote. How are we going to do that? Well, the founding fathers knew what they were doing, so they said, the vice president, he gets to sit in there, he can talk about whatever, or she, in the case of Kamala Harris, gets to sit in there, they listen, they can talk, whatever, but they don't get to vote until it's a dead even split, and then they get to be the deciding vote. That was to help break any compromises. And really, this is actually something kind of rare for the vice president to have to step in on something like this. Most senators, Senate, type of laws going through situations, what have you, they try to make sure they don't have to rely on that, because, not to say that it's like, well, they'll vote along party lines or whatever, but it's usually better to just kind of avoid that, because, you don't want your law to be basically at the mercy of a coin flip. It's not a good day, so most times they won't even try voting if they don't think they can win it. Get over that 50 or 50%, I should say. Let's see here. The Senate shall choose their other offices, and also a president pro tempore in the absence of the vice president, or when he shall exercise the office of the president of the United States. Okay, so kind of the same thing that the House of Representatives did. You had to make sure that whoever was sitting in there, they had all their various officers. Again, you get to name whatever you want. You get to say whatever powers they have. We don't freaking care. But you also need to add in what's referred to as a president pro tempore, or temporary president. Not temporary president as in president of the United States, but temporary president of the Senate. Okay, go on the line before, the vice president of the United States is considered the president of the Senate. So basically, you're going to have a temporary president of the Senate in case of 2 things. One, the vice president isn't there because on vacation, taking a nap, got sick and died, I don't know. But whatever reason, vice president isn't there. for normal absence, or second one, which is going to be more rare, in the situations where a vice president actually has to take over for the president. Now, this can be done in two scenarios. The most famous, most thought of one, I guess you could say, is when the actual president is no longer in office, gets kicked out, dies, whatever. This is what most people think about. But actually, one of the other things is that you can actually have the vice president temporarily take over the president's seat in the case of the president being unable to do the job. So, for instance, if this actually happened with Trump, a lot of people are saying, well, this should have happened and it didn't happen. Oh, the evil, whatever. But let's say that the president has to go under some super intensive surgery and is going to be out for a week. Can't do the job of president. The vice president can actually take on the powers of the president for that week. And as soon as the president's fit as fiddle again, they go back to being normal. So, like I said, situations like that. The Senate shall have the sole power to try all impeachments. When sitting for that purpose, they shall be on oath or affirmation. When the President of the United States is tried, the Chief Justice shall preside, and no person shall be convicted without the concurrence of 2/3 of the members present. Okay, so this is part where I talked about checks and balances before. This is one of those key pieces. It has to be up to the House of Representatives to say, we need to impeach somebody. But it's up to the Senate to actually hold the trial. Check. They're checking each other, but also balancing each other out. All right, so you can't just have one house, let's say the House of Representatives being like, screw the president, we don't like him, we got 2/3 priority here, we're gonna say he needs to be impeached and then convict him. And then you have the Senate who's like, no, we like this president and he's not done nothing wrong and now we can't do nothing because the other house impeached. We're not going to do that. So, again, going back in recent history with President Trump, when he was impeached twice, that means they had to get the House of Representatives to get enough of their members to actually say he needs to be impeached, and then it went over to the Senate to do the actual impeachment hearings. Again, we do not want a House, either one, to just, one day they're freaking ticked off at whomever, the president in this case, and just get rid of him. So they specifically required that 2/3 of the members, technically it says present, so you have to kind of show up in order for your vote to count. You can't just, well, I wasn't there, so it means you can't vote whichever way, I don't know. But the 2/3 of the members present, you had to get that much to get rid of someone. Now, funny story. While there have been several presidents now that have been actually for real impeached, none of them has ever been convicted. I think there's I want to say it's Andrew Jackson. I never remember the first person who got impeached. Jackson or Johnson. I always get the two mixed up. They're either Andrew Jackson or Andrew Johnson. I'm pretty sure it was Jackson, though. And, of course, you had Lyndon B. Johnson, and then Bill Clinton, and then Trump twice. And the reason I bring that up is that, and a lot of people will go with, well, Lyndon B. Johnson was impeached and he was kicked out of office. No, he actually wasn't. He was impeached, but never convicted. He left on his own. He actually resigned on his own. Just some cool facts you can throw at your liberal friends, because you listen to history and they don't know jack. Let's see here. Judgment in cases of impeachment shall not extend further than to removal from office and disqualification to hold and enjoy any office of honor, trust, or profit under the United States. But the party convicted shall nevertheless be liable and subject to indictment, trial, judgment, and punishment according to law. This was something that had to be brought up during the second impeachment of Donald Trump. Something I actually brought up. I don't know if I did it in one of these YouTube videos or not, but basically it says here, smack dab in the Constitution, again, to curb Congress from getting too crazy. The only thing you can do with an impeachment is to kick somebody out of office and say they can't come back. That is it. They don't actually go to prison if they've been impeached and convicted. However, you can try them again through a normal court trial to get thrown in prison for whatever. So, for instance, let's say that the President of the United States And this course is still the same. It says removal from office. And I forgot to talk about that. So earlier in the previous sentence, I meant to bring up the President of the United States. So the Chief Justice is in the I just lost the Supreme Court. Sorry, Supreme Court's where they're talking about that if the president's getting impeached, then the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court has to sit there. For everybody else, it's just whoever happens to be. Or I think the person presiding, if I remember right, is supposed to be the vice president because they're technically the president of the Senate. And the reason they don't want the vice president to be impeaching the president is because, again, power grab. He might be trying to get him convicted so he can be ousted so you can take over. Yeah, that just sounds like a bad day. So that's why they, again, checks and balances. But anyhow, in this part here, we're talking with, again, you can only remove from office and as well as disqualify them from holding any kind of public office again. Which is one of the reasons why the second impeachment even went through, why people were even trying, is because it wasn't so much to kick him out of Congress, kick Trump out of the presidency, but to make sure he couldn't ever run again. And of course, that failed, so technically Donald Trump could still run again, which makes liberals mad. I don't care. The times, places, and manner of holding elections for senators and representatives shall be prescribed in each state by the legislature thereof, but the Congress may at any time, by law, make or alter such regulations, except as to the places of choosing senators. Okay, so this one can get very, very dicey, especially we saw this already. So, time, place, manner. When you do it, where you do it, how you do it. Those are going to be decided by the state legislature. Congress can step in and change any one of those, if need be, with the exception of where people go to vote. So they can do the time, which is kind of a normal thing. All right, actually, it's not kind of a normal thing. It is a normal thing for general elections, which is the ones most people think about it being in November. Congress decided that date. Theoretically, according to how this is written, the states could all have general elections on different days. But Congress came out later and said, no, we ain't going to do that. We're going to have everybody do it at the same time, same day, to stop any craziness from going on. However, primaries, yeah, that happens all over the freaking place. So, and then manner, how are you voting? All right, modern day, of course, we've got paper ballots, you got mail-in ballots, you got the absentee ballots, you got computerized ballots. And in those days, you had, obviously, throw the computer one out. That ain't going to do anything. They didn't have no computers. I didn't even know what that was. But for the rest of them, you could, same thing. You could say, well, you're going to do a paper ballot. It's going to be all write-in, or it's all going to be, some kind of punchy thing. I don't know. They didn't really have punch machines, but you could probably come up with something. But Congress could do how you would do it. They typically don't, though, and this kind of gets really important with all that. Congress could, but they won't. And the reason they won't, because they keep trying, they keep doing it over and over. They actually just did this. They're like, well, we're going to make it whatever, and got flamed, completely shot down because people don't want them doing that. It was supposed to stay at the states. So this can be very, very tricky if you don't know what you're doing. The Congress shall assemble at least once in every year, and such meeting shall be on the first Monday in December, unless they shall by law appoint a different day. Okay, so this one is going to be really hard to wrap your head around. Congress has to come together at least once every year. Once. Does Congress leave D.C. at all? All right. Again, founding fathers were very big on the fact that these are supposed to be representing the states. So you kind of have to be in the state you're representing at some point to know what your state wants. Modern world, we can just send me an email. If you need something, just send me an email. I'll be there. I'll read it, maybe. I'll have some other person read it and tell me what they said. Or I'll ignore it, whatever. But this is one of those things where you have to have them convene every year, once every year, at least. You can have to do it more than once. And they're going the first Monday in December, which, by the way, nothing has changed. That's the last freaking month of the year. So you're saying it's got to be done before the end of the freaking year, guys. We know you're probably going to be there for a week because, who's going to get on the old horse and buggy and ride out to Congress for a one-day thing? All right, so we're going to give you at least a month to get the job done. But we didn't think you need any more time than that. Well, nowadays, you can't get them to leave D.C. I had this argument before. It's fine. Anyhow. And again, this says, unless by law they appoint a different day. So basically, this is when Congress can actually state, we're convening both houses on such and such a day. And you actually hear, if you pay attention to the news, you'll hear this a few times, called an emergency session of Congress. But they have in there now like so many different sessions, and it just never seems to end. It seems that they're in D.C. more often than they're home, when the people who wrote the dang Constitution were thinking it'd be normal for them to not be in Congress all the time. That's just weird. Anyhow. Final section for today, for this video. Each house shall be the judge of the elections, returns, and qualifications of its own members, and a majority of each shall constitute a quorum to do business, but a smaller number may adjourn from day to day, and may be authorized to compel the attendance of absent members, in such manner and under penalties as each house may provide. Okay, so the houses get to decide their own stinking rules. You hear about this a few times when it comes to... what's the one they keep throwing around right now? Dang it. Not syllabus. I keep taking that word and trying to drop it out of my mouth, and it's not the right one. The one to make you come back. Filibuster. There we go. So, the rules on filibuster, right? That's going to be decided by each house. They get to have their own rules on it. All of it. So, it says each house gets to be the judge of the elections, returns, qualifications of its own members. So, they get to say whether or not the election was held fairly for all the people that were done. Returns of the votes, if we're returning people, if we have to return people, not return the votes, but return people. Okay, you got to come back to Congress. They're in charge of getting that done. Qualifications of those members, again, kind of the same thing we talked about earlier with however you qualify. This is going to be kind of decided upon that. They get to decide how they're going to do business. They have to get a group of people to decide. It's not just going to be one person, arbitrarily today. We're going to do business today in our pajamas. All right, now you got to have a group of people all doing it. However, they are saying that while you have to all sort of be there, you can have like one or two people leave. Not be there every single day, but you can't have like 4 people show up and that's a session of Congress. You still got to have like a huge majority, all right? You can't have, they don't really have in here like how many people, because obviously, they knew the country was probably going to grow, so they were not going to set a solid number, but it was the idea you had to have a pretty vast majority. The other piece here is it's authorized to compel the attendance of absent members. So basically, if somebody in the House of Representatives just decided not to show up, they could send other members out to drag his hide back. This is actually something that didn't happen in Congress at the federal level, but it happened at the Texas level, where a bunch of the Texas senators, I think, or senators, their version of the House of Representatives, but they all just blitzed after some, I think it was an election integrity law was up for vote, and they didn't want to vote because they knew they're going to get trounced. So they just left. Well, that breaks the quorum. They can't do the vote. So they're just like, haha, no, you can't vote because we're not here. Well, then Texas basically did the exact same thing because they had similar writings in their constitution that compelled them to come back. And they actually said, as soon as they stepped foot in the state of Texas, State Patrol, Highway Patrol, the Texas Rangers, freaking city cop, it didn't matter. Throw them in handcuffs and drag them back here. Like, you can do that. I don't think they actually did that as far as dragging them. That'd been the most hilarious thing. I would love to see that on video. To have a bunch of Congress members dragged in, kicking and screaming. Because they decided not to show up for work that day. I think it'd be funny. They might not, YouTube might not, but I think it'd be hilarious. I don't. But anyhow, so they say how you're gonna get people, how you compel people to come back. What kind of penalties they can put on them, so you get fined or whatever, dragged back in handcuffs. Each house may determine the rules of its proceedings, punish its members for disorderly behavior, and with the concurrence of 2/3 expel a member. So basically, when it comes to, it's not exactly impeachment, but they can still get rid of one of the members if they can get 2/3 majority to say, no, this person is an idiot, and just boot them. I cannot think of any time that's happened, but then again, I haven't looked through the entire history of Congress because who has time for that? But it's not a very common thing for this to happen. I mean, that guy's got to royally jacked up in order for something like that to occur. A lot of times, if they're getting into that position, the governor of that state will just yank them back. However, like I said, it gets to determine its own rules, how it does things. It gets to punish its members for being a bunch of knuckleheads. Basically kind of talks about the same thing as the previous one, but goes a little bit more narrow in the fact it's just saying anything we're doing. Each house shall keep a journal of its proceedings, and from time to time publish the same, excepting such parts as may in their judgment require secrecy, and the yeas and the nays of the members of either house on any question shall, at the desire of 1/5 of those present, be entered on the journal. Alright, so this one, you see journal of proceedings. For the modern world, we refer to them as minutes. I actually thought about getting a funny clip from the TV show MASH about minutes in the military, but I'm not going to splice that. YouTube probably get mad at me. But anyhow, it's just the minutes. That's all it is. Whatever we're doing that day, we need to write it down. Because one of the big things that the Founding Fathers definitely did not want happening is a bunch of secret kangaroo nonsense, where people are just doing whatever the heck they felt like and hiding it from the people they were representing. That's just no. Bad. In fact, if you actually go to Washington, D.C., this is really, really cool. If you go to Washington, D.C., and go to one of the chambers, it's like one of the older chambers. I don't think they actually use it anymore. I think it's the old Senate. And the reason they don't use it anymore is not because of anything necessarily bad. It's just it's too small now. Because at the time it was built, there weren't that many people. They had to build bigger ones because they had to fit more people in there. But the original ones, I want to say it was the Senate chambers. It could have been the House chambers. I can't remember. They actually had it set up with acoustics that this is one of those amazing technological things that apparently the modern world can't figure out anymore. It drives me nuts because, now it's all about soundproofing, suck up all the sound and not have sound. And now we have to have microphones to make sound. They didn't have no microphones then. And these super geniuses that built the place set it up so you couldn't whisper in that room. If you tried whispering in that room, everybody across the hall, everybody across the room would still hear you plain as day. At the same volume, because they actually did that. When I went through on a tour there, they had their little concierge person take off her microphone. She was wearing a microphone to go through it. You'd be like listening on headphones. So you wouldn't be getting pestered by everybody else. She actually took it off to show that, and she whispered. And she would have us whisper, like a couple of us whispered, to show that, it really is that thing. And yeah, you could not whisper in that room without everybody hearing you. It was so cool that it was set up that way. But the reason it was set up that way is so people couldn't be hiding what they were doing. There's some dirty dealings going on in the back room. Well, guess what? Now you can't dirty deal. Everybody's going to hear you. Talk about a hot mic. The whole thing is a hot mic. You're not going to have no hot mic moments. Anything you say is going to be noticed by everybody. So you just didn't say anything that could get you in trouble. Now, of course, we have hot mic issues, unfortunately. But anyhow, so this all it says is anything you do, you need to write it down, and then you need to publish them. All right. It says from time to time. The reason for that is because you can't just write something down and then, throw it out there on the internet because there was no internet. So you had to do it, let's say quarterly, publish the notes of the meeting or the minutes of the meeting, excuse me. And on top of that, some people got really awful handwriting. So you probably want to get it taken over to somebody to turn it into, actual typing type stuff. So it comes out pretty. But whatever. So that was what was also something that needed to be done. Whatever. Not to say they had typewriters, but you might typeset just for to pass it along to the rest of the country if need be, whatever. However, it does talk about accepting such parts as may in their judgment require secrecy. Now, a lot of people have concerns about this today, and with good reason, right? One of the things the founding, like I said, with that one room, they didn't want any secrets in there. Everything should be heard. However, there are some times when you don't need the rest of the world knowing your business, right? There's something you're up to that kind of needs to be done on the down low, so we're not going to publish that stuff. This is supposed to be kind of national defense type stuff, but there's the theory. I'm not going to say I've subscribed to it, but I'm not going to say I don't, because I can say these things. But there is the idea out there that some things occur in Congress that this needs to be kept in secret because they don't want to get caught doing stupid stuff. And that is one of those things that gets trounced anytime. I shouldn't say anytime, but most of the time, anytime somebody catches it, they'll bring it back up and throw it into their face. Because it still has to be written down. It still has to be written in the journal. It's just maybe not published to the rest of the world. But it's still going to be written down, and somebody can go back in there later and say, hey, this should be let the rest of the world know. This actually falls under what's now, this wasn't there at the time of the writing Constitution, but now there's a law out there referred to as the Freedom of Information Act. And this was kind of one of those things, is getting in there and pulling those secrets out if people were going, well, this isn't really anything that needs to be kept secret. And a lot of times, the idea is that people would be keeping things secret that would be embarrassing to them. Something that embarrasses the Congress, or a particular Congress member, or a group of Congress members. No. That's not. You don't get to do that. All right. You goof up. You get to goof up in front of the whole country. That's your dumb decision. All right. So we ain't doing that. But anyhow, neither house nor during the session of Congress shall, without the consent of the other, adjourn for more than 3 days, nor to any other place than that in which the two houses shall be sitting. So basically, if one house is running, the other house has got to run. We're not going to have the House of Representatives coming up with some law and then blitz, take off, go home for a couple of weeks, while the the other house, let's say the Senate, is still sitting there thinking whatever. They got to work jointly. Now, it does give them 3 days. So let's say that Congress, House of Representatives leaves, they're done, they got the law they wanted passed done. Senate's still working on it. 3 days later, House of Representatives like, I gotta come back now. And, essentially, somebody's gonna have a conversation in the Senate. Dude, what the heck is taking you so long to decide on this? Whatever. Anyhow, we have 5 more sections to go, but that's gonna be another video because, according to the clock, I'm at my 52-minute mark. So, I'm getting close to an hour. Not that I care that much, but you might, because you might have other things to do. So glad you guys listened. So glad you guys watched. Like I said, this is a thing that we're doing with a partner YouTube channel, which is called, hold on, I remember it this time, or I tried to. It is OK Storytime. That's it. I remember it now. OK Storytime. And this video will have the partner video in the description, like I did last time, so you can watch both. And then we will, whenever the next video is ready, we'll put it out there for you. I might go in later. Also, keep an eye out. I am working on trying to start yet another podcast. Basically, a new podcast on a different platform. It's going to be kind of the same format as any of my old things are, but because my podcasts keep getting taken down because I'm Superior American, or because I'm not going to pay for something I'm not sure if I like. These things have happened. But anyhow, I'm going to try it out and see what happens. So if you're there, if you happen to be bouncing around iHeartRadio, that's what it should be going to if I get it set up right. And you see Realmore Studios or Realmore Rants or whatever the heck we decide to call it, go ahead and check us out. We'll probably announce that later once we get it all set up. But anyhow, thank you for watching. As always, make sure if you have something you want to say it. Put it in the comments. We love America. We love freedom. We want to make sure that you exercise your freedom to speech. And, as also previously stated, if we see any dislikes for any, because we want the likes too, right? More likes means more visibility on YouTube. But if we see any dislikes, we're going to put that into our description as well, because we don't think YouTube was right in thumbing down the thumbs down, essentially, in trying to block the thumbs down. Because, they're whatever their stupid decision was. Like I've always promised since that occurred, if I see thumbs down, I'm putting it right in the description. I don't care. That's your call. You get to vote on it because this is all about freedom, America, and more freedom. This is Realmore signing out.